Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live on this Tuesday night. I'm joined by Record Sports Scott McDermott. Scott, how's it going?
I'm good, Daniel. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic. My favourite time of the day, and between us, like keep it between us, but you're actually kind of, I think, the number one hotliner at the minute, Scott. You know, that's
Don't say
what,
that. Don't say that.
and it's actually I've been inspired to say that because Jamie T has written in with a comment saying, has Keith Jackson been given the heave-ho from the hotline? I'd like to commend whoever is behind this excellent decision. Sadly, he's not. Well, not sadly, of course not. He's not been given the heave-ho, but he is on holiday.
Sounds as if there was a bit of kind of wishful thinking in that email there, but that's very harsh. Very harsh sidekick. I'm missing him already.
If you are watching, Keith, you know, can't you wait to have you back?
Listen, he'll be sunning him. He'll be on a sun lounger in Spain with a cocktail in his hand or something. You know what Jacko's like.
I wouldn't bet against that. Right, best place for us to start, I think, tonight, Scott, is Matt O'Reilly. I know. Yes. I feel I've talked about Matt O'Reilly more than his family have in the last couple of weeks. It's getting a bit mad, but reports in the last couple of days that Brighton have launched a formal bid, rumoured to be around £26 million, which would break the records Kieran Tierney went for. I put this to Mick last night that if I was Matt O'Reilly and you know you've got your choice of these kind of exotic clubs, I know Brighton's a good club, nice part of the world, but I'm not sure Brighton would be the top of my list. What do you think of that?
But it's Premier League, Daniel. Ultimately, I mean that's it. I mean the Premier League is held in such high regard with these players now. I mean it's a promised land in terms of money, prestige, what it can lead to, sets you up for life. You touched on it there. I mean Brighton. It doesn't seem that long ago that Brighton were, I mean, League One, League Two. The stadium was in ruins. It was like the Litheen Stadium they were at, and
that's it.
Going absolutely nowhere. But now you look at them, and my God, I mean, Everton. I know they were progressing anyway under guys like Chris Hughton and that, but especially obviously since Graham Potter came in, just such a progressive club. Play football in the right manner. They're clearly run brilliantly as a club. Obviously, we know guys like Davy Weir's in there, for instance. So I think they're a really attractive proposition for players now. And you look at them on Saturday, I mean, go to Goodison, 3-0. I mean, what a result for the manager. Is it Hustler? I think if I'm pronouncing it right.
He's only 31.
31 years old. I mean, coming for, I think he came from St. Pauli, German second division. What a performance. And the interesting thing about that was, I always like, especially in the first day of the season, it's always really interesting looking down the team sheets and the lineups just to see where squads are at and who's starting, who's on the bench. And immediately I noticed when I looked at Brighton's on Saturday that obviously first thing you notice is Billy Gilmour's on the bench from a Scottish perspective, but there's a lot of speculation obviously about him, whether he'll still be at Brighton. And the other thing is, so with him out, you're looking at the midfield and seeing that James Milner is in there. I mean, what age is James Milner?
38, I think.
38-year-old playing centre mid. No, listen, it didn't do them any harm. Way to Goodison, 1-3-0 comfortably. Could have been 4 or 5. But clearly they need reinforcements in midfield. I mean, they've brought in the boy Mats Wiefer from Feyenoord, and he kind of played as a kind of sitting midfielder on Saturday. So they're obviously looking for somebody to get in beside him. I think irrespective of what happens with Billy Gilmour, whether he stays or whether he moves on. But on the face of it, O'Reilly looks like a perfect fit for them. And in terms of getting back to your point, is it attractive? Listen, the money he'll get, the stage that he'll be on, the way they play. If I'm assuming that if O'Reilly speaks to the manager, speaks to the club, you can only assume that he'll be impressed in terms of the trajectory that they're on and where they're heading. So, listen, nowhere near the size of Celtic. Obviously, that goes without saying. You're not going to get No, their biggest derby is what, Crystal Palace. It's not the Old Firm. I know they were in Europe obviously a couple of seasons ago, so there's the opportunity to get back there certainly, but it's unlikely Brighton will be getting into no challenging for Champions League spaces, so O'Reilly loses that as well. But listen, when he weighs it, if that's his option or one of his options, when he weighs everything up, I think it'll be a pretty decent option for him.
Obviously, the Hotline Live, it's all about your comments at home, and if you're watching, get involved if you're brave enough in the comment section below. Plenty of reaction to this, Scott, about Matt O'Reilly. Joe Gillen Sr. going from Celtic to Brighton is a backward step. You're better than that, Matt. John Toll, he won't get Champions League games with Brighton. And Daniel Hughes, given that Atalanta and Atletico Madrid have been interested in him, Brighton would be a huge disappointment. But see, to be honest, everything you said is obviously bang on. But I'm kind of more of that thinking. I just feel it's a bit sad that Brighton are taking Celtic's best players.
You're an old romantic, obviously. Because, listen, I get it, but you need to be realistic. Modern football, the way it is at the moment, look at the players that have left Celtic. Odsonne Edouard to Crystal Palace, that's a step down. Stuart Armstrong, Virgil van Dijk, Fraser Forster, Wanyama, all to Southampton. Massive step. I've been to these places, I've been to Southampton for games. Absolutely nothing like what you get at Celtic. But Matt O'Reilly's been here, what, is it 3 years he's been here now?
About 2.5,
He's done pretty much all he can do. He's obviously won every trophy. He's excelled in the derby against Rangers, scored goals, played really well in the Champions League, even if results haven't really gone to plan for Celtic as a whole. I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about his pass for Kyogo against Atletico Madrid at Parkhead. An unbelievable moment for him. The noise that night was incredible. So of course he's leaving that behind, but he's going to think his career. I mean, 3 years ago he was at MK Dons, maybe wondering where he was actually going in his career. For him to be potentially back in the Premier League, and listen, once you're at Brighton, if you can do it there, who knows? I'm not saying Matt Riley's good enough or he's going to be on that level, but you get to Brighton and do well, who knows if a Man U, a Liverpool, whatever, come in for you, and then that's you, you're in a different stratosphere then.
In fairness, there's been a couple of people writing in kind of showing the other side of the argument. Amanda Burns, gutted if he goes, but we paid £1 million for him. I'm sure Brighton would want to buy for 28 plus add-ons. Amazing bit of business. If anyone says any different, they're lying. And this one from Alan Gemmell. A lot of Celtic fans are sneering at a club like Brighton. They've got money. They can buy most players out there. Nice stadium, excellent facilities. And played in Europe last season. And he doesn't even mention the Premier League, which I get it. I get it. But I don't know. It's just something a wee bit sad, I guess, that's where we are in modern football.
That's where the Old Firm are. But that first point there is crucial about the profit Celtic have made on him. That is where Rangers and Celtic are. That is the model that they crave to achieve. We've talked so much about Rangers in the last 3 or 4 weeks about the state of their recruitment, the state of the makeup of their squad, how they've ended up in this kind of mess of the squad. A few years ago, Rangers were offered 14 million for Alfredo Morelos, a guy they bought for 1 million, and they knocked it back. They had their reasons, but it backfired on them spectacularly, and they ended up getting nothing for him a couple of years later. The Old Firm just can't afford to make mistakes like that. And Matt O'Reilly is he's the archetype, he's the poster boy for this model. You go to League One in England, you go to MK Dons, you sign a guy for 1.5 million quid, and you sell him for 25 million. I mean, that is an incredible bit of business and something that Rangers, Celtic, whoever should aspire to. I mean, listen, other clubs abroad have been doing this for years. Probably the best example's Ajax. I know they've got maybe a bigger pool to pick from in terms of different countries, but they get guys in on the cheap. They give them a platform, give them a stage to perform on. They do well. They sell them for a massive profit. And Rangers and Celtic have done it a few times to their credit. Probably Celtic more than Rangers in the last 5 to 10 years. But that is where they need to go with the recruitment policy. And as that first caller said, it is an absolute no-brainer. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you think Matt O'Reilly is. It doesn't matter where you think he can take you. Whether you think he can single-handedly take you to the next phase of the Champions League, whatever. If Rangers or Celtic sign a guy for $1 million and bids are coming in at 20 plus, you let him go. It's an absolute no-brainer.
Aye. I should finish on Matt O'Reilly on this comment, which I thought was quite a good point as well, from Thomas Fleming, who says, mad how the Scottish League gets players undersold. Carvalho and Smith Rowe both just left Arsenal and Liverpool for near 40 million each, and they barely kicked the ball in 2 or 3 seasons. I think that's an important point in the sense that if O'Reilly is going to go, I think Celtic should really take advantage of the absolute wild market that's down there. £100 million players that don't even look particularly good.
100%. 100%. And listen, that is one thing I would say when I'm saying about being realistic and that, but you're right, Brendan Rodgers is right. Celtic are totally within their rights to get the highest price possible. I think Rodgers said the other week, clubs in England they value the league rather than the actual player. They obviously look at the Scottish Premiership and think the standard's pretty low, so you can get in with low bids. But Rodgers is right. It's not about the league. It's about the player and what the buying club think that he can do at their club. And you're totally right. You see it every week in the Premier League. I seen a story today. Liverpool are selling. It's the big boy Van den Berg, the centre back, who has barely played a first team game. I think he went on loan to Preston last season or the year before. So he's going abroad. I think he's going to buy a Leverkusen or something, and they want 20 million quid. I mean,
mad, isn't it? Insane.
That's unbelievable. I mean, every young player coming through now seems to have a minimum starting price of like 15 million. Aye. But that's just for the Premier League. That's the market. That's TV money. It's it's £1 billion contracts not done there now in terms of TV deals. So that takes the values up. Obviously, we've not got that. But getting back to your original point, Celtic are totally right to hang on for the best price. And listen, see if Celtic do get 25 million plus from Brighton or anyone else, you do need to applaud them for holding fire, because there's no doubt there's been 1 or 2 bids came in for Atalanta or whoever, and it would have been easy, as I said, it'd been easy if maybe one comes in for 15 or 16 and think, still a big profit. But they've been pretty clear on where they value O'Reilly, and it looks like they're going to get what they want.
Plenty of live comments coming in all the time, guys, and I should say thank you for them and get involved in the comment section below. Harry Conahan has written in, the only thing we go for is bigger wages, nothing else. I've got this one in as well, Scott. I think this one is directed at yourself. Who was that offer for? And I think he's talking about the Morelos, the Morelos £14 million offer.
That was from Lille, wasn't it? That was from Lille. I mean, I think that's common knowledge. I mean, at the time there was mad figures going about China and stuff like that. But I genuinely believe, I think most people within the game know that there was one big genuine bid from Lille at the time. This is at the point where Morelos is flying, obviously, and he's scoring 2 away to Feyenoord, the Europa League and stuff like that. So, but I think genuinely there was a bid there for 14 million from Lille. But Rangers, I think at the time, did Rangers know? I think Stuart Robertson came at some kind of fans forum and said, Moussa Dembele went for 20, so we'll hold on for 20, something like that. And they thought they were doing the right thing, turning it down. But my God, that was a big mistake at the time, and no, it's been costly for Rangers.
Aye, absolutely. It's obviously, talking about Rangers, it's a very different story across Glasgow when it comes to transfers. Here in just a bit. Here in the Hotline Live, we get people writing in with suggestions every day. Some of them really fanciful, some of them just outright mad. The one that caught my eye today, Scott, was one guy writing in asking if Antonio Colak could be the answer to Rangers' problems. He was a decent player, 18 goals in 39 games for Rangers. Let me just find the comment here. It's from Robert Livingston. He says, no cash flow to buy costly big names. Transfer window shut soon. It's turning into a tragedy. Rangers need someone who can give them real hope of winning the title. Can't afford to buy, so Rangers are looking for loans and free agents. Clubs don't want that. Should prioritise a number 9. If possible, they should inquire to get Antonio Colak on loan, out of favour at Parma, mostly a sub last season. He wanted to stay and was forced out. I always thought he was a decent player, Scott, but when Michael Beale came in, it was basically over for him.
Aye, I'm not sure about that, Daniel, in terms of trying to get back. Listen, Colak was a brilliant finisher. No, I think he's a better finisher than Dessers, for example. I don't know the exact stats, but I mean, I think his goal to chance ratio would be far better than Dessers. I think most people accept Dessers has to get kind of 3 or 4 chances before he takes one. I think Colak was different. I don't think he get too many chances in games, but the ones he did get, he normally took.
Right.
But it's interesting because, I mean, at the start of that season when Colak arrived, and Van Bronckhorst was there, I mean, he scored for fun. I mean, his start to life at Rangers, I mean, it was something that I remember writing about it at the time, going to games. I mean, it was something ridiculous, like 12 goals in his first 13 games or something. It was ludicrous. But yet the thing that sticks out is I can remember, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember fans weren't that enamoured by him. They thought he was just a goal scorer. He didn't do enough outside the box. He didn't go and link up. They wanted more from him. And I think by the end, I don't think there was many punters moaning when he eventually left. So it's interesting now. I mean, listen, that guy might be on his own, but it's interesting if people are now thinking, God, they could do with somebody like that. I'm not sure. I mean, as he said, he's not been playing at Parma. It's not been a great move for him. I don't think he started a lot of games. So you have to kind of ask why that is. He's 30. He's already been here. I mean, the guy said in his comment, you need to go and sign someone to give you hope of winning the title. I'm not sure bringing Antonio Colak in would give Rangers fans that much hope of going and winning a title. Is he that much better than Dessers? No, he's not. As I say, a really, really good finisher when he got chances. Scored a goal to get Rangers to the Champions League, albeit it was a tap-in for Malik Tillman, if you remember, PSV. But no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's the answer. I think they need to. I do think Rangers need a striker in, but I think they need to be. I think it has to be someone better than Dessers and better than Colak.
JV McAllister has written in as well, backing up the point on Colak. He should never have been away. He wasn't liked. Shameful. On the kind of the Rangers situation in general, Scott, we've had tons of comments to the Hotline Live just talking about the general malaise that seems to be engulfing Rangers honestly on a daily basis. I almost feel like I'm repeating myself every night, but I'm going to throw a couple at you. Tony Caw here. Sima going back out on loan to some team in France. Should say Abdullah Sima is supposedly close to signing for Brest in League One. Hannibal looks like he's going to Burnley. Romania looks like he's going elsewhere. It looks like we've just gave up and accepted this is the squad. I mean, I'm sure that isn't the case. I'm sure they've not given up, but it does kind of feel a bit weird that Rangers have been so quiet.
Well, listen, there's a few things within that to talk about. I mean, if Sima's going to Brest, if that was a permanent deal, you could understand it. But if it's a loan, that would be surprising given that, I mean, Philippe Clement spoke openly at the end of last season, start of this season, about how he'd like Sima back at Ibrox. But he did say a few weeks ago that I think he hinted at this type of signing by saying we can't keep signing loan players that we then can't afford to buy.
Aye.
And he must have been getting at Sima, that must have been a reference to Sima at the time. So it felt like they'd obviously inquired about getting him back, but Brighton were looking to get him out on a permanent, and Rangers couldn't afford it. That's understandable, given the money that Brighton would probably be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's right, and he's going on loan to France to a provincial club like Brest, I'd be really surprised at that, given we're led to believe Sima loved it at Rangers, loved his time at Ibrox, and the fact that we know Clement would have been keen to get him back. That would be a surprise and be really disappointing for Rangers' point of view. In terms of the other ones, like Ramdani and who was the other one? Was another name in there?
Ramdani and let me try and fit Hannibal.
And Hannibal, of course, Man U. I mean, those are ones that you thought Rangers could maybe go and do. But listen, I thought Philippe Clement's comments last week were really, what's the word for it? I don't know if damning's the word. Really striking, I'm not sure. But he spoke with a real openness at one of the press conferences last week about where they're at. And the fact that he was talking about bringing wages down, scaling back, almost like downsizing. And almost kind of painting a picture that if we spend recklessly here, there's a chance that you go back to the dark days of 2012. I mean, I thought it was really depressing. I admired his honesty, and I'm pleased that he spoke like that about the situation. But for the punters, that must have been really depressing to hear. I mean, he effectively said, obviously, that they can't get bodies in until they get bodies out. So unless Todd Cantwell, Yanis Hadji, maybe Rabbi Matondo, Ben Davies, people like that, unless they get bids for them and can get them out the door, it's difficult to see how players are going to come in. And the scary thing about that is you're looking at the squad, as we've touched on so often on here, you're looking at that squad and thinking it's nowhere near good enough. It's miles behind where Celtic's is. And as I touched on the first week of the season, if that's the squad, honestly, I mean, Rangers, of course, you'd still think they'll finish second place, but I think they're going to need to fight for it with that squad, because a few teams in the league will fancy themselves going up against Rangers. So, listen, there's a couple of weeks left in the window. I'm saying a couple of weeks, week and a half, maybe. I think they need to. I think they need to be clever. They need to be creative. They need to find money from somewhere. If it means almost speculating to accumulate, they have to do something before this window closes to improve the overall quality in that squad, because it's nowhere near where it has to be if you're going to put a title challenge in. The balance,
it's not Rangers, is it?
No, balance is all wrong. There's people there there's players there that don't want to be there. There's players there that aren't part of Clement's plans. So however they do it, between Niels Coppen, the board and Clement, they're going to need to be really inventive, really creative, because the supporters deserve at least 2 or 3 new players to come in to give them a bit of hope, to give them a chance of competing at the top of the table and competing for the domestic cups, and also competing in the Europa League. Remember, I mean, they've got 8 games in the Europa League. I mean, people are so disappointed, rightly so, with the Champions League exit. But you've still got a Europa League campaign with a lot of good teams. You're going to get new format, 8 games against 7 different teams, home and away. You're going to need a squad to cope with that. This squad is nowhere near ready to cope with that demand when it comes to quality. So I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if they'll do it, but I think they have to do something before the window closes. Otherwise, it feels like Clement's going to he's going to be getting into these competitions with one hand tied behind his back.
We should say plenty of comments on this. As I say, I could read about the Rangers comments for days because there's just so many of them. This one caught my eye. Eddie Eason. As the song goes, things can only get better. A team that is threadbare, a manager thinks he's better than he is. Then to cap it all, the embarrassing celebration at the weekend. And this one as well, Scott, I'm guilty of this as well, because a couple of people writing in saying Brest are in the Champions League. Rangers easy okay. They're in the Champions League though. Genuinely think the result against Kiev ended hopes of getting Sima back. Unfortunately, I just googled Brest and they did. They finished third last year. So I was completely with you. I thought they were a smaller French team. But Champions League football's.
Well, listen, they're a small club, but fair play if in the Champions League, then fair enough. And listen, maybe that has been the deciding factor. Maybe Brighton, if they were sending Sima on loan, maybe the condition was that he went to a Champions League club.
And
listen, who knows? Even if Rangers didn't make the group stages, getting to the playoff round would have got them £4 million. I mean, that could have been the difference. Who knows what the loan fee might have been to Brighton? Who knows? That might have been the deciding factor. I'm trying to get Sima back, and obviously it hasn't worked out for him.
Aye, absolutely. Right, time is a little bit against us, Scott. I need to crack on, but one other thing linked to Rangers that we need to discuss. Michael Beale, he did his first kind of high-profile post-Rangers interview yesterday. He was on a podcast down south. He made some kind of interesting revelations, I guess is the word, that's definitely sparked a very big reaction on the Hotline Live. I'm going to, I'll just batter through a couple of these, and then I can get your take on it. Samuel, Beale was an absolute clown. What decent person would go to a game when a manager's in charge and run about Rangers bars? McCoist, Walter Smith, Tommy Burns, Martin O'Neill would never do that. Jacob says, Warburton, Caixinha, Gio, and even Le Guin left Rangers with my best wishes, and I would always try and remember what they did for the club, but I'm embarrassed to say Michael Beale managed us. I was saying to you before we come on air, Scott, that managers come and go, some just don't work out. Michael Beale's the first one I can remember taking so much stick on a personal level. It doesn't feel like it's nothing to do really. Well, his tactics obviously weren't great, but sorry, on you go.
No, I think the Van Bronckhorst thing when he turned up at the Aberdeen game. I mean that was a bad move, and I think the cold light of day. I think privately, if not publicly, Michael Beale himself would admit to that he shouldn't have done it. It wasn't a good look. So he got off on the wrong foot right away in that regard. Listen, I think a lot of Rangers fans were quite happy with Michael Beale's appointment at the time. Mm-hmm. Personally, at the time, I thought it was the wrong move, and I said that at the time. But there was a lot of punters thought or believed he was obviously the brains behind the 55 title triumph under Steven Gerrard. It was all about Bilbo and this guy. This guy, top-notch coach, get us playing this brand of football. I think a lot of fans bought into that, and obviously it was a big letdown. There's no getting away from it. Listen, I don't profess to know Michael Beale personally. He was always pretty good to deal with, I must admit, when he was manager up here in terms of the media and stuff. I said to you before we come on, I even went down to Sunderland to see him once he'd left Rangers. I went to a game against Newcastle in the FA Cup, and he was very, very welcoming, very accommodating. So I can't say anything negative on that score in terms of dealing with him on a professional level. But listen, there's no getting away if he was a huge disappointment as Rangers manager. He knows that. The fans now know that. And parts of the interview, I've only listened to bits of it. And obviously he's coming up with reasons as to maybe why it didn't work out. No staff leaving the club. Maybe I think he's kind of hinting that he didn't know. Once you actually lift the bonnet and see what's underneath. Maybe problems were bigger at the club financially than what he thought. But I'm sorry, there's no getting away from that transfer window that he had when Dessers, Danilo, Dow, a couple of others, Sam Lammers came in, spent a lot of money on those players, and they haven't worked out. Now, listen, he made a couple of great signings as well. Jack Butland for one on a free transfer. We mentioned Sima on loan.
Sterling.
I still think Dujon Sterling will turn out to be a really good signing for Rangers if he obviously starts to get regular games, regular starts. But the money they spent, I mean, well, we don't know exact figures, but you're led to believe, for instance, 5 million Danilo, 4 million Dessers, 3 million Lammers, maybe 12 million quid on 3 strikers, none of which have really worked out. I mean, I know, listen, Dessers is the number 9 just now. He's scored 22 goals last season. He's the first pick. So I suppose you could argue he's did okay, but for that outlay, I don't think Rangers have had enough back. And obviously Lammers is gone now. Danilo's struggling to get back in the team after injury, but listen, none of them have set the head on fire. And I think for me, the Michael Beale reign, if you like, will always be defined by that window. No, that window where he was given, maybe carte blanche is too strong, but he was, if you remember at the time, Ross Wilson had just left. Michael Beale took everything, as well as being the first team coach. He took all the other stuff on his shoulders. He was the guy that was going to meet players and have signing talks and talk about contracts. And he took all of that on. And at the time, listen, there was a few people, maybe myself even one of them, that didn't think that was a bad thing. Didn't think it was a bad thing that the manager, who, by the way, had picked up Raskin and Cantwell in the previous window, I think it was the January window, and both of them had come in and had an impact. So you thought maybe it's the right thing, giving him the power to go and get the players that he wants. But listen, they got their recruitment badly wrong with too many players at that time, and it's coming back to bite them now.
I should say that in Michael Beale's defence, he's obviously not here to defend himself. If you are watching, Michael, we'd love to have you on the hotline live, an open invitation. But in his defence, a couple of people have written in kind of defending his time in charge of Rangers. Rob Jones says Beale was subpar, yet he had a better win rate than Clement, who still lacks a clear style. Clement's tactics often amount to punt and pray. Drew McMaster, Beale's a better win ratio than Clement, yet Clement received a lucrative 4-year contract. It's absolutely absurd. And Vic Spungen saying, completely agree with him. I think Beale. Brendan mentioned he was a fine manager when he was sacked. Gio and Beale got a raw deal, and PC Philip Clement is no better, and he may never beat Celtic. So I was definitely right in saying that the stick I've seen on Record Sports social media channels that Beale gets is pretty hefty, but there's some people out there that maybe don't think he was that bad.
Yeah, it's just interesting for those comments. And listen, I know it's a relatively small sample size, but it just shows you Clement's under pressure. Do you know what I mean? People knew digging it. I think our good pal Jacko brought up the win rate thing a couple of weeks ago, which was surprising to me at the time to hear that Beale currently had a kind of better win rate than Clement. But it just shows you, I mean, listen, new contract or no new contract, it doesn't matter. If he's not doing it and the fans are unhappy and they go to Celtic Park and get a doing on September the 1st, the manager will be under major pressure, irrespective of how many years he's got left in his deal.
It's funny you say that, Scott, because Dave Joyce has written in, their next defeat or draw, he'll be under immense pressure. A scalping at Celtic Park could see him gone. Do you think there's any way in the world, if it's 4 or 5-0 to Celtic on the first, he could go? I mean, is that a bit over the top?
I don't think he would go after 1-0 firm game. And as we're talking about giving him the new deal. But as the caller touched on, the pressure would be immense. Aye. And listen, the sad thing is, especially for Rangers fans, I mean, as we sit here now, can you see anything other than a convincing Celtic win at Parkhead on September the 1st?
Not really.
I mean, it just... And this is a point I tried to make. I said it last week. I mean, you think about Europe and you're trying to build a squad and try to compete in different fronts. And maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, but when it comes to the Old Firm, this is in Celtic side as well, but for any Rangers manager at the start of a new season, I think the number one thing you need to ask yourself is, do I have a group of players here that can go to Celtic Park and win? Because that is the acid test. And it's very unlikely that you're going to win a league if you don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe for a minute Philippe Clement looks at this Rangers squad and thinks they can go to Celtic Park and win on September the 1st. I mean, listen, they're his players. He's working with them every day, sees them every day. Of course, he's going to talk them up and say, no, he sees positives there. He knows what they can do. He's obviously going to say he thinks they can go there and get a result. But the way Celtic are going at the minute, the way the whole kind of narrative around their place at the moment, obviously the couple of signings that they've brought in, it's just impossible to see how Rangers go there at the moment and take something. Listen, if you offered Clement and the Rangers players a draw at Celtic Park just now, they would absolutely bite your hand off for it. But even that, I think even that's hard to envisage at the moment.
Aye. Elsewhere, before we wrap up, Scott, Neil Lennon is reportedly on the brink of getting the sack at Rapid Bucharest, even though he's only been there for about 5 minutes. Graham Goodbrand's written in saying he'll be back at Hibs by Christmas. Martin Stewart saying, kind of thought it was inevitable. It's a strange appointment. The language barrier alone would be problematic. Elsewhere as well, Scott, Kevin Nisbet to Aberdeen potentially. Do you think he could be the replacement for Antonio Colak? Is he? Sorry, got Antonio Colak on the mind. Bojan Miovski, who's obviously off to Girona, is Nisbet. Oh, he's a very talented player, but is he up to replacing Miovski?
Potentially. I mean, if he's fit and firing and he's in the kind of form, if he can find the kind of form when he was at his best at Hibs. But that'll be difficult when you look at the last kind of year. Obviously, the move to Millwall hasn't worked out for him. I know he had an injury pretty early on in his time down there. And it's a shame because it's a big move for him. He wasn't good for him at the time. Millwall were desperate to get him. If you remember, they tried to get him in January and he was down there.
That's right.
And he actually turned them down not to go and finish the season with Hibs. So it's a big move for him going to the Championship. And Gary Rowett was the manager at the time. Obviously, things have changed. A different manager he's got now. And he's not been playing. Like I said at the start, I always try and look at the team lines and you see if the Scots down south are getting a game. You always look to see if Nisbet is playing at Millwall and more often than not, he's been on the bench or coming on or whatever. So it's a shame in that regard. So obviously, what you see guys doing well. Listen, I think he's a terrific finisher. He showed that at Hibs. I watched him when he was a young boy, even at Thistle, and thought Partick Thistle thought he'd real potential. So he could be a really good signing for Aberdeen if he's back at that level. The only thing, my only criticism of Kevin Nisbet over the years, and I think a few people said the same thing, was just his work rate up front. He's playing as that lone striker, and you know what it's like now, Daniel, modern football. That lone striker's got to put a shift in. The way systems are, formations, the way teams like to press. That's always the one thing I kind of worried about Nisbet, is whether he had that and he's had that in his locker. Now, listen, I don't know if he's changed his game since he was down south or whatever. I don't know how fit he is at the moment. I think he's come on the last couple of games for Millwall, so he's clearly fit enough. Aye. But to get him up to Aberdeen, is he as good as Miovski? No, I don't think so. And even if they got Nisbet and loan, I would wonder whether they would still go into the market and try and get another striker with the cash that they've banked from Miovski. But on the face of it, if they can get Nisbet fit and firing, he knows the game, he knows the opposition up here. He's done it before. Then should be a decent signing for him.
I think he's only 27. He scored 31 goals in 78 games in the league for Hibs. I think it's the makings of a great sign. It's clearly not worked out for him at Millwall. Jimmy Teelan is building something really good at Aberdeen. I think really they look really impressive, and the infrastructure Aberdeen have got, the size of the club, relatively in Scotland, they should be up there. Dare I say, even challenging for second.
Aye, and listen, if he does get back to the level we're talking about, this is a boy not that long ago. I think I'm right in saying he was ahead of Lawrence Shankland, the pecking order for Scotland.
Aye, no, you're right. Aye, he was.
Steve Clark, if you remember, had him ahead of Shankland, I'm sure, at the time. He's got a few caps for Scotland already. He probably thought, in fact, I know because we spoke to him after a Scotland game shortly after he'd made the move to Millwall, and he felt that move to England, move to the Championship, was going to take his game to another level, which would help him obviously internationally. And it hasn't worked out for him. So if he can come up here and get firing again, get back involved in the Scotland squad, then it could be a great move for him and Aberdeen.
He scored his only Scotland goal against the Netherlands in a pre-Euros friendly back in 2020, and of course he was part of the Euro 2020 squad. So
Euros.
Highly thought of, Scott, I think that brings us to the end of tonight's Hotline Live. I should say, if you contributed with a comment, thank you very much. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. if you want to get involved then. Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Great. I'm away for some Lowland League action now. East Kilbride v
East Kilbride.
Don't say I'm not a man of the people, Daniel.
I was going to say enjoy that. hope the weather's all right for you.
I know. It's my first trip to... Well, I've been up to K Park a couple of times for press conferences, but I moved house about a year ago. We're 10 minutes away, so I've been saying for about a year I need to go to a game, an actual league game. So this is my chance tonight, East Kilbride v Stirling. So I'm looking forward to it.
Fingers crossed for plenty of goals. Thanks for watching at home, and we'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.